Mafia boss found a pregnant girl hanging from his roof. What happened next is a king of the city walks onto his penthouse roof and finds a pregnant girl hanging from a rigged line. He cuts her down. The cameras are looped. A mark is burned into her skin. A note says, "Return what you stole." He locks the building and swears she's safe, under his rules, but the trap is bigger than the roof. A ghost broker wants a secret book that can burn empires. A slick club owner smiles like a snake. And when the boss looks in her eyes, a terrible thought hits him. The danger on that roof might be tied to him. Bullets rain. He shields her with his body. She fights for her freedom. He offers the one thing he never gives, his whole world. But who staged the hanging, and why does the girl unlock a vault only a king should open? Did the hunter just find his heir, or his doom? When love collides with power, who survives the drop? Calla huddled under thick blankets in Valerio's private suite, her wet clothes replaced with soft loungewear that smelled faintly of lavender. The massive room seemed to swallow her whole, all dark wood and leather, illuminated by the city lights filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Rain still pelted against the glass, each drop a reminder of how close she'd come to death. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She wrapped them around the steaming mug of broth a silent maid had delivered, letting the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. The baby kicked, strong and steady, making her eyes water with relief. Valerio stood by the windows, his broad shoulders casting a shadow across the carpet as he spoke in low Italian to someone on the phone. Though she couldn't understand the words, the controlled anger in his voice made her shiver. He ended the call and turned, his dark gaze finding her immediately. "The security feeds were professionally compromised," he said, moving to sit in a leather chair across from her. "Someone with inside access. You will tell me everything you know." It wasn't a request. Calla took a slow sip of broth to steady herself. "I don't know much. They approached me at work 2 weeks ago, my pastry shop, said they knew about—" She pressed a hand to her rounded belly. "About the father, that he was important." Valerio's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Continue." "They showed me photos of myself, coming home, at the grocery store, even sleeping through my bedroom window." Her voice cracked. "Said if I didn't cooperate, they'd make sure neither of us survived. They gave me instructions, locations to visit. Had me memorize messages I didn't understand. Then yesterday, they tattooed this." She turned her wrist, displaying the hourglass mark. "A deadline," Valerio murmured, almost to himself. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "The messages, repeat them." Calla closed her eyes, recalling the strange words they'd made her practice until her throat was raw. "Corvus seeks the crown. The ledger will burn. Time runs out at midnight." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. When she opened her eyes, Valerio's face had gone completely still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence. "They used you as a message board," he said softly. "A disposable warning." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. They knew everything about me, about the baby. I tried going to the police, but they had people there too. I could tell by how the officer reacted to my story." "And tonight?" "They texted an address, said to come alone or they'd kill my sister in Miami." She clutched the mug tighter. "When I got there, someone grabbed me from behind, injected something that made everything fuzzy. The next thing I really remember is hanging from that rope, trying to scream through the gag while they took pictures." Valerio stood in one fluid motion and began to pace, his movements predatory. "They wanted me to find you. A calculated message using an innocent woman and an unborn child." His jaw clenched. "You said they asked about the father." Calla stared into her broth. "I never knew his name. It was just one night, months ago. He wore a mask at the charity masquerade where I was catering. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. He was kind, gentle, nothing like what I'd expect from someone important enough to make me a target." Something shifted in Valerio's stance, so subtle she almost missed it. He moved closer, his presence filling her awareness. "This masquerade, was it at the Bellamy Hotel?" The night of the blue moon? Her heart stuttered. How did you— The dress you wore, he continued, voice low and intent. White silk with gold embroidery. You had gold dust in your hair that sparkled when you laughed. You smelled like vanilla and almond extract because you'd been baking all day. Cala's mug slipped from nerveless fingers, but Valerio caught it before it could spill, setting it aside. She stared up at him, recognition dawning like a sunrise. It was you, she whispered. You're the father. The mask of controlled neutrality cracked, revealing something fierce and possessive underneath. He crouched before her chair, one hand coming to rest over her belly. The baby kicked against his palm and his breath caught. I searched for you, he said roughly, but you'd used a catering company outside my territory. By the time I found the connection, you'd already left your job there. Now I understand why. They made me quit, said I needed to be somewhere more accessible. The implications of who he was, what he controlled, were starting to sink in. You're the king they mentioned, the one they said would let me die. They were wrong. His other hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away tears. You are carrying my child. You are under my protection, and I am going to find every single person involved in putting you on that roof and make them pray for something as merciful as death. The calm certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, she felt the first real sense of safety since this nightmare began. She leaned into his touch, exhaustion finally overtaking fear. What happens now? Now you rest. The doctor will return in an hour to check on you both. His thumb traced the dark circles under her eyes. Tomorrow we plan, but tonight you are safe to sorrow. Sleep. Dawn approached with creeping fingers of pale light when Dr. Chen found the note. She'd been checking Cala's damp clothes, now draped over a heated rack, when a sodden piece of paper slipped from the coat pocket. Sir. The doctor's voice brought Valerio to her side. She held up the paper with gloved hands. Return what you stole. Valerio's expression hardened as he studied the hourglass tattoo on Cala's wrist again. The auditor, he said quietly. A signature I haven't seen in years. Cala stirred on the couch where she'd been resting. I never wanted to die, she said, her voice hoarse. They staged everything. The rope, the position. They took pictures while I was barely conscious. Valerio nodded slowly. The setup was deliberate. Amateur suicides don't typically loop security feeds. He turned to her. Your phone was destroyed in the rain, but there was a number in your apron pocket. Would you like to try it? When she nodded, he placed his own phone on the table between them, switching it to speaker mode. The number rang 6 times before clicking to voicemail. Cala's face fell. Let's get some food in you first, Valerio said, gesturing to a covered tray that had appeared. Then we'll talk about the past week. The smell of warm bread and soup made Cala's stomach growl. As she ate, details spilled out like water from a cracked cup. I was head pastry chef at La Maison Dorée, she began. Everything was normal until this man started coming in. Gray coat, expensive shoes. He'd order nothing, just watch me work through the kitchen window. When did this start? 10 days ago. Then last week he cornered me in the alley behind the kitchen. She pushed the soup bowl away, hands shaking. Said I had something that belonged to his employer. When I told him he was mistaken, he smiled and said mistakes could be fatal. Valerio's fingers drummed once on the table, the only sign of his tension. The day you disappeared? They grabbed me during my morning prep. 4:30 a.m., no witnesses. Cala wrapped her arms around herself. They kept me in different places, blindfolded during moves, made me memorize phrases I didn't understand. And tonight, they said it was time to deliver their message. Someone stuck me with a needle. Everything went fuzzy after that. She touched her throat where rope burns were beginning to darken. Until the rain woke me up, hanging there. Valerio checked his phone, scrolling through security reports. The cameras were looped for exactly 13 minutes. That's not amateur work. That's an inside exploit. Dr. Chen returned with fresh vitals readings. Blood pressure's stabilizing, but she needs real rest and prenatal vitamins. I'm moving her to my suite, Valerio said, No blind spots there. 2 panic buttons. Complete coverage. Calla looked up sharply. Your suite? The safest room in the building. He stood, offering his hand. Unless you'd prefer the panic room? She took his hand, letting him help her up. No more cages. Not a cage, a fortress. He led her through a series of keypad-locked doors to a massive suite done in charcoal and cream. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city spreading out below, now touched with morning light. Bathroom through there, fresh clothes in the closet, the bed is yours. Where will you sleep? I don't. Much. He showed her the panic buttons, one by the bed, one in the bathroom. Press either one, I'll be here in seconds. My men are securing the building. No one in or out without my approval. Calla sat on the edge of the bed, running her hand over the soft comforter. Why are you helping me? Really? Because someone used you to send me a message. That makes you my responsibility. He moved to the window, studying the awakening city. And because I don't like bullies who target pregnant women. A knock at the door revealed his lieutenant, Marcus. They spoke in low tones while Calla explored the bathroom, marveling at its marble luxury. Freeze all exits, Valerio ordered. Pull guest lists from Club 13 for the past month and have the car ready by 9. Sir? Marcus glanced at Calla. Our friend wants to play games? Fine. We'll give him what he wants. Bait he can't resist. Is that safe? Calla asked, emerging from the bathroom. No. Valerio's smile was sharp. But it's necessary. We're going to draw them out, make them show their hand. And me? You'll be with me, every second. He turned to Marcus. Full team, full protocol. I want eyes on every corner within 10 blocks of the club. Yes, sir. Marcus left, already speaking into his comm unit. Calla sank into an armchair, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. The sunrise painted the room in soft golds and pinks, a gentle contrast to the steel in Valerio's voice as he continued giving orders through his phone. Try to rest, he told her, moving to leave. We have 3 hours until we need to move. Valerio? She caught his sleeve. Thank you, for cutting me down, for believing me. His expression softened fractionally. Sleep, little baker. You're safe here. As the door closed behind him, Calla curled up on the massive bed, one hand resting on her belly where the baby kicked softly. Outside, the city came fully awake, unaware of the games being played in its shadows. In 3 hours, she'd be bait in a trap she didn't fully understand. But for now, in this fortress of a room, she could finally close her eyes without fear. Sunlight streamed through the penthouse windows as Calla emerged from the most luxurious shower of her life. The bathroom counter held neatly arranged toiletries, a hairdryer, and 3 stacks of fresh clothing still with tags attached. Everything you need should be there, Valerio said through the door. Take what fits. She found soft cotton underwear, stretchy black leggings that accommodated her bump, and an oversized cashmere sweater. The simple act of being clean and dressed made her feel more human, more in control. When she stepped out, Valerio sat at a glass desk, examining the damp note under bright light. Better? Yes. She twisted her wet hair into a knot. But I need to try calling Sophie again. Please. He gestured to the phone on speaker mode. Calla dialed with shaking fingers, holding her breath through 6 rings before Sophie's cheerful voicemail kicked in. Sophie, it's me. I'm safe, but I can't. She glanced at Valerio, who gave a slight nod. I can't come back yet. Tell everyone I'm okay. Satisfied? Valerio asked as she ended the call. No, but thank you. She paced the room, noting cameras in every corner. What are your rules? Simple. You don't leave my sight without guards. You tell me immediately if anyone contacts you. You follow my instructions without hesitation. He set the note aside. In return, I keep you alive. And my baby? Dr. Chen entered with monitoring equipment. Let's check, shall we? Calla lay back on the couch, lifting her sweater. The cold gel made her flinch, but the steady whoosh-whoosh of the heartbeat monitor brought tears to her eyes. Strong heartbeat, Dr. Chen said. Good movement, but you need rest, proper nutrition. She'll get it, Valerio interrupted. He dismissed the doctor, then turned to Calla. Now, tell me about the week they held you. She described windowless rooms, masked men, repetitive questions about documents she'd never seen. They kept saying I knew where it was, that I had to tell the truth. Where what was? I don't know. Some kind of ledger? Her voice cracked on the word, and Valerio's eyes narrowed. They wouldn't explain. He studied her face for a long moment. The notepaper is custom stock, triple weight cotton rag, watermarked. Only one place in the city uses it, Club 13. The glass tower, on River Street? You know it? Only by reputation, high-end clientele, impossible to get into. She wrapped her arms around herself. The man in the gray coat, he had a membership card. I saw it when he pulled out his wallet. Valerio's phone buzzed. He read the message, jaw tightening. My men found trace evidence on the roof. Professional gear, military grade, this wasn't random. Then let me help. Calla leaned forward. I can identify the man in the gray coat. If he's at this club, absolutely not. I'll know him. His height, his walk, the way he holds his right shoulder slightly higher. It's too dangerous. I'm already in danger. She stood, forcing him to look up at her. They used me as bait once. Let me choose to be bait this time. Valerio rose slowly, towering over her. If you come, you follow every order instantly. No questions, no hesitation. Yes. If I say drop, you drop. If I say run, you run. Clear? Crystal. She met his gaze steadily. He checked his watch. We leave in an hour. The lunch crowd will be arriving. His security team arrived with equipment, sleek bulletproof vests, earpieces, weapons that disappeared under tailored jackets. Valerio dressed with efficient precision, charcoal suit over body armor, gun holster invisible beneath the perfect cut. A woman brought Calla a simple black dress that skimmed her curves without clinging, paired with practical flats. The dress is lined with Kevlar panels, Valerio explained. Not full protection, but better than nothing. She touched the fabric. You plan for everything? I plan to keep you alive. He adjusted his cufflinks. She noticed they concealed what looked like small blades. The club has 3 levels. Ground floor is public dining. Second floor is private rooms. Third floor is invitation only. Where will we be? Starting on ground. You'll sit at the bar, watch the staff and guests. I'll be close enough to reach you in seconds. The security team moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and communications. Valerio's lieutenant, Marcus, handed him a tablet showing building schematics. Exits covered, Marcus reported. Teams in position. Cars waiting. Valerio nodded. Remember, no one approaches her without my approval. If anyone tries, eliminate the threat. Calla's stomach churned at the casual mention of elimination, but she forced herself to focus. This was her chance to face her attackers on her terms. The elevator ride to the garage was silent. Calla studied her reflection in the polished doors. The dress made her look elegant despite her condition, though fear made her pale. A sleek black SUV waited, windows clearly bulletproof. Valerio opened her door, hand at her lower back as she climbed in. Ready? He asked as the engine purred to life. She took a deep breath. Yes. Good. His voice dropped lower. Remember, sharks surface when they smell fear. Show none. The crystal chandeliers caught the afternoon sun, scattering light across Club 13's marble floors like scattered diamonds. Valerio kept Calla within arm's reach as they approached Benedict Hale's private table. The club owner lounged in a leather booth, crystal tumbler in hand, his carefully cultivated charm masking something colder. Mr. Cruz, Benedict rose smoothly. What an unexpected pleasure. Skip the performance, Valerio said. This paper stock is exclusive to your establishment. He placed the note on the table. As is this mark. Benedict barely glanced at the hourglass symbol. We have many guests. I can't monitor every scrap of correspondence. Can't? Or won't? Valerio's voice remained soft, but ice crept into his tone. While they spoke, Calla scanned the staff, moving through the dining room. Waiters in pressed blacks, bartenders polishing glasses, busboys clearing tables with practiced efficiency. Her gaze caught on one young man stacking plates. His sleeve rode up, revealing a familiar mark. The busboy's eyes met hers. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by panic. There! Calla grabbed Valerio's arm as the boy bolted toward the service corridor. Valerio's men moved instantly, cutting off escape routes. They cornered the busboy against the kitchen doors, but before anyone could grab him, a sharp crack split the air. The chandelier above them exploded. Crystal shards rained down as screams erupted. Valerio moved with lethal grace, covering Calla with his body as glass tinkled against marble. His voice cut through the chaos, ordering his team to locate the shooter's position. "Third floor, northwest corner," Marcus called through the earpiece. "Moving to intercept." Benedict had vanished in the confusion. Patrons scrambled for exits while staff ducked behind overturned tables. Through the pandemonium, Valerio guided Calla toward the kitchen, one arm around her waist, the other holding his weapon ready. "Stay close," he ordered as they pushed through the swinging doors. Kitchen staff froze at the sight of his gun. "Everyone out, now!" They scattered, leaving burners lit and pots steaming. The industrial kitchen offered multiple exits, but also countless blind spots between steel counters and hanging racks. Another shot cracked. A pot exploded, spraying scalding liquid. "Move!" Valerio pulled her behind a massive refrigerator as alarms began to blare. His men's voices crackled through his earpiece, coordinating their sweep of the upper floors. "The service elevator," Calla whispered, pointing to a discreet door marked "Staff Only." Valerio nodded. "Marcus, cover the loading dock, we're coming out hot." They moved in tandem through the kitchen, Valerio checking angles while Calla watched their six. The elevator required a key card, but Valerio simply shot the control panel. The doors slid open with a cheerful ding that seemed absurd amid the chaos. The descent to the loading dock felt endless. When the doors opened, Marcus waited with the SUV idling. They piled in as more shots peppered the concrete, sparking off metal. "Drive," Valerio ordered. His voice was deadly calm as they pulled away. Whoever orchestrated this will suffer far worse than they planned for others. Calla's hands shook as adrenaline ebbed. "There's something I need to tell you." Valerio turned to her, expression unreadable. "Weeks ago, before any of this started, a man approached me at work." She wrapped her arms protectively around her belly. "He whispered that the baby's father had stolen a crown, and I would pay unless—" She swallowed hard. "Unless I helped lure the king to an edge." Valerio went completely still. The phrase struck him like a physical blow, echoing his most carefully guarded secret, the crown. Ledger he'd taken during the succession wars, the book that held enough secrets to topple empires. Did he say anything else? His voice was carefully controlled. Calla shook her head. "Just that I'd know what to do when the time came. I thought he was crazy until they grabbed me." The SUV turned down the ramp into his tower's underground garage. Valerio's mind raced through implications. If someone had connected Calla to him, had traced his movements that night, he needed to verify the Ledger's hiding place immediately. Marcus pulled into a reserved space near the private elevator. "Building's secure, boss. No tail." "Triple the patrols," Valerio ordered. "I want every entrance watched. No one in or out without direct approval." He helped Calla from the car, noting how she leaned into his support. The adrenaline crash was hitting her hard. Her hand trembled in his as they entered the elevator. "You're safe," he murmured, pulling her closer. "I won't let them near you again." She nodded against his chest, but he felt her tears dampen his shirt. The elevator rose smoothly toward the penthouse, while Valerio's thoughts turned to the hidden safe where the Ledger waited. He needed to check it now, before anything else went wrong. Pieces were falling into place. The staged suicide, the hourglass mark, Benedict's carefully crafted ignorance. Someone was making a play for the Ledger, using Calla as both key and collateral. They'd failed to kill her on the roof, failed again at the club, but Valerio knew they wouldn't stop. The elevator doors opened to his private floor. Guards snapped to attention as he guided Calla through the security checkpoint. Her exhaustion was evident in every step. "Rest," he told her, leading her to the bedroom. "I'll have food sent up." She caught his hand before he could turn away. Thank you for saving me. Again. He squeezed her fingers gently, then stepped back. He had a ledger to check and enemies to hunt. Whoever threatened what was his would learn why kings wore crowns of thorns. The vault door closed behind them with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, LED strips cast an arctic glow over polished steel walls. Valerio moved with practiced efficiency, checking seals and sensors while Calla hugged herself against the chill. Stay by the door, he instructed, scanning for breach indicators. Everything appeared untouched. Security logs normal, humidity stable, temperature perfect. Calla shifted her weight, taking a small step sideways. A soft click echoed through the chamber. Valerio spun toward the sound. Don't move! Too late. A section of wall slid open with mechanical precision, revealing a shallow alcove. Inside lay a leather-bound book wrapped in what looked like a pale yellow baby blanket. The Crown Ledger. His most dangerous possession, suddenly exposed. I swear I've never been here, Calla said, eyes wide. I didn't touch anything. Valerio studied the pressure plate beneath her feet, mind racing. This sensor wasn't in his original specs. Someone had modified his vault to recognize her specific weight distribution, the extra mass of pregnancy creating a unique trigger. She had been engineered as a living key without knowing it. Stay perfectly still. He crouched to photograph the exposed mechanism with his phone, documenting every angle. Only one person had known every detail of this vault's construction. Only one could have altered it so precisely. Theo Raines, his former security architect who'd vanished a year ago after showing signs of instability. The man who'd built these walls now seemed to be using them against him. Can I move now? Calla asked, tension evident in her voice. Slowly. Come to me. He guided her away from the pressure plate. The panel slid shut with the same whisper-quiet precision. Valerio completed his inspection without touching the ledger. No point disturbing evidence. He'd seen enough to know this was professional work, planned months in advance. They exited the vault, passing through decontamination before emerging into a warmer hallway. Calla's shoulders relaxed fractionally as color returned to her face. This way. He led her to a staging room, comfortable but secure, with cameras covering every angle. A guard brought water while Valerio pulled up a chair across from her. I need you to list every face you remember from the past month, he said, anyone unusual. Start with regular customers, then move to strangers. Calla took a slow sip of water, gathering her thoughts. There was the morning crew at the bakery, regulars I saw every day, a new delivery guy 2 weeks ago, the man in the gray coat who kept watching me. She trailed off, hand moving protectively to her belly. Tell me about him again, every detail. Tall, thin, always wore the same coat even when it was warm. He'd order coffee but never drink it, just watched. She rubbed her temple. I started varying my route home, taking different buses. Then last week, outside the grocery store, she stopped, breathing carefully. Go on. Someone grabbed me from behind, put something sweet-smelling over my mouth. When I woke up, they had already... She gestured to the hourglass tattoo on her wrist. Valerio checked his phone as information from his network filtered in. Surveillance photos, property records, power consumption patterns, all pointing to an abandoned tech facility where unusual network traffic had been detected. If Theo was running his operation from anywhere, it would be there. The man was brilliant, but creatures of habit were predictable. He'd choose somewhere with the infrastructure he needed. Valerio sent orders to assemble a convoy. 3 vehicles, full tactical team, medic on standby. No chances. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows as they prepared to move. Calla changed into practical clothes while Valerio briefed his lieutenants. The plan was simple: contain, extract, interrogate. Stay close to me, he told her as they headed for the garage. If I give an order, follow it instantly. She nodded, face pale but determined. The elevator descended smoothly to the underground level where 3 identical black SUVs waited, engines idling. Valerio helped her into the middle vehicle, checking her seatbelt himself before sliding in beside her. The doors thudded shut with heavy finality. Through the bulletproof glass, police sirens wailed somewhere in the city below. Cala's fingers trembled against her stomach as the convoy pulled out, heading toward answers that had been a year in the making. "They won't touch you again," Valerio said quietly, covering her shaking hand with his own. She turned her palm up, gripping his fingers like an anchor as the city streets blurred past. The sun sank toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire. In the growing darkness, the convoy moved like shadows through traffic, carrying them toward a confrontation that had been set in motion the moment Theo disappeared with his secrets. Valerio kept his hand in Cala's, his other near his weapon. The city lights began to flicker on one by one, creating a glittering maze of possibilities where his former architect might be hiding. But Theo had made one crucial mistake. He'd involved Cala, and Valerio protected what was his. The SUV turned onto a quieter street, following the coordinates that promised to lead them to Theo. Cala's grip tightened as they passed under a broken streetlight. In the dashboard clock, the minutes ticked toward evening, each one bringing them closer to answers about the vault, the ledger, and the elaborate trap that had been laid using an innocent woman as bait. The concrete pillars of the overpass loomed ahead, casting long shadows across the convoy. Traffic had thinned to almost nothing in this industrial stretch, the few remaining vehicles hurrying past as if sensing the danger that hung in the air. Abandoned warehouses with broken windows stood sentinel on either side of the road like silent witnesses. Cala noticed Valerio's posture change, a subtle tensing, his hand shifting closer to his weapon, fingers curling with practiced readiness against the grip. His jaw tightened imperceptibly, eyes narrowing as they scanned the surroundings with predatory focus. Two black sedans appeared from side streets, their tires squealing against the asphalt as they boxed the SUV between them. The trap sprung with mechanical precision, like clockwork gears clicking into place. Cala's stomach dropped as realization hit. They'd been waiting, planning this moment. The first shots pinged off reinforced glass, the impacts creating starbursts in the bulletproof windows. Valerio moved with lethal grace, shoving Cala down behind the armored seatback with one powerful arm while drawing his weapon with the other. "Stay down," he ordered, voice gone arctic cold, devoid of any warmth that had colored it moments before. His entire demeanor transformed in seconds. The businessman vanished, replaced by a killer. Gunfire erupted from both sides, a deafening cacophony of destruction. The driver swerved, tires screeching against pavement, trying to break free, but the sedans maintained their positions with professional precision. Through the chaos, Valerio returned fire with surgical accuracy, his breathing steady and controlled. Each shot found its mark: shoulder, knee, throat. No wasted movements, no hesitation, just the methodical elimination of threats. Bodies slumped behind wheels, blood spattering windshields. Cala curled around her belly, heart thundering against her ribs like a trapped animal. Glass tinkled down like deadly rain, sparkling in the fading sunlight before landing on the leather seats and floor. The smell of cordite filled the air, acrid and chemical. She counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Focusing on staying still, staying alive, her fingers digging into the leather seat until her knuckles turned white. A bullet cracked the windshield with a sickening thud, creating a spiderweb pattern but holding firm against the assault. The driver took a sharp turn, scraping against one of the attacking vehicles. Metal screamed against metal, a horrific symphony of destruction that sent sparks flying into the air. The impact jolted Cala sideways, her shoulder slamming into the door. Valerio's expression never changed as he eliminated threats one by one, his face carved from marble. His eyes held winter's fury, glacial and unforgiving. His aim devastatingly precise, as if each target had been marked for him alone. When the passenger window of the left sedan exploded inward under his fire, their attacker's head snapping back in a spray of crimson, the car veered wildly, spinning out of control before crashing into a concrete barrier with a thunderous impact that shook the ground. The second vehicle attempted to retreat, tires smoking as the driver realized the tide had turned, but Valerio's men had circled back in their support vehicles, cutting off escape routes with brutal efficiency. Trapped, the remaining gunmen scattered like rats, abandoning a sinking ship, all except one who dropped his weapon and raised his hands in surrender, terror etched across his face. Valerio was out of the SUV before it fully stopped, his movements fluid and purposeful. He dragged the man from the wreckage with one hand, slamming him against the dented hood. His questioning was brief, efficient, punctuated with calculated pressure to wounds already sustained. One word emerged through the captive's bloody teeth, gurgled through a mouthful of crimson. Auditor. Cala's hands shook violently as she straightened up, adrenaline making her limbs feel like water. Brass casings littered the floor around her feet, glinting dully in the fading light. Outside, Valerio's men secured the scene with practiced efficiency, checking bodies with clinical detachment, collecting weapons, and erasing evidence of their presence. The methodical cleanup felt surreal against the backdrop of violence. He returned to the SUV, holstering his weapon before checking her for injuries with careful hands that betrayed none of the violence they had just delivered. His touch was gentle, at odds with the carnage surrounding them. "Are you hurt?" he asked, eyes scanning her face, her body, for any sign of damage. She shook her head, still trembling, her pulse racing beneath her skin. Her fingers found his jaw, seemingly of their own accord, tracing a line of blood from someone else's violence that had spattered across his face. "Thank you," she whispered, voice barely audible over the ringing in her ears. "For keeping us alive." Something electric crackled between them, a current that connected them through the chaos and death. His eyes darkened, pupils dilating as they fixed on her mouth, a moment before he crushed his lips to hers. The kiss blazed through her like wildfire, raw need and primal claiming that burned away fear. His hands tangled in her hair, gripping the soft strands as she pressed closer against the hard planes of his chest, tasting gunpowder and adrenaline and something fundamentally male that made her head spin. It felt terrifyingly right, like pieces clicking into place after being jumbled for too long. Like finding solid ground in an earthquake, something to cling to when everything else was shaking apart. Distant sirens shattered the moment, their wailing growing closer with each passing second. Valerio pulled back, his breathing ragged, lips slightly swollen from their kiss. A muscle ticked in his jaw as he fought for control. "This changes everything," he said, voice rough with emotion and danger. "Once you're in my world, there's no walking away. No safe distance. They'll keep coming until one side is dead." Cala lifted her chin, defiance replacing fear as she met his gaze unflinchingly. "Then win," she said simply, 2 words that carried the weight of a decision that would alter both their lives irreversibly. His expression shifted, surprise, respect, and something darker, possessive, flickered across his features. He nodded once, decision made, helping her back into the SUV as his men finished erasing evidence of the firefight, washing away blood with industrial chemicals and collecting the last shell casings. They reached the abandoned rectory just as true darkness settled, stars appearing one by one in the navy blue sky. The stone building stood like a forgotten sentinel, bearing scars of old fires that had blackened its walls, its windows long since shattered by time and vandals. Crumbling gargoyles watched from broken cornices as Valerio's team swept the interior before allowing them inside, their flashlights cutting through shadows that seemed to breathe with ancient secrets. The message waited on the floor, burned into ancient wood with precision. "Every debt is born. Every debt must die." The charred letters seemed to pulse in the beam of Valerio's flashlight, a promise of retribution. Cala shivered, not entirely from the cold that seeped through the broken windows and cracked walls. Valerio directed his men with quiet authority, gesturing for them to search methodically, starting with obvious hiding spots behind remnants of furniture and working toward the subtle ones: loose floorboards, hollow walls, spaces behind corroded fixtures. She wandered toward the chapel area, drawn by the remnants of stained glass that still clung to window frames like colorful tears. Moonlight filtered through the fragments, casting colored shadows across worn pews that had once held the faithful. The scent of dust, mildew, and forgotten prayers hung in the air. "Here." She pointed to an oddity that caught her eye, one pew slightly askew from the others, its alignment off by mere inches in a way that seemed deliberate rather than random. Valerio knelt beside her, running expert hands along the underside of the ancient wood until he found it. A flash drive secured with electrical tape, hidden where casual observers would never look. He pocketed the drive without examining it, his expression guarded. "Time to go. We'll view this somewhere secure," he said, helping her to her feet with a gentleness that contradicted the violent capability she had witnessed earlier. The journey back to the SUV felt longer, weighted with possibilities and unspoken questions. Kala's lips still tingled from their kiss, the memory of his mouth on hers burning through her thoughts. Her mind kept replaying the moment his careful control had shattered, wondering what other depths lay beneath his icy exterior, what other passions he kept tightly leashed. Armed men flanked them as they walked through the overgrown grounds, alert for another ambush, weapons ready. The night remained quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Too quiet, perhaps, like the calm before a storm that gathered unseen on the horizon. The SUV's engine rumbled to life, headlights cutting through darkness like laser beams as they pulled away from the rectory, gravel crunching beneath heavy tires. Valerio kept one hand on his weapon, ready for threats that might emerge from the shadows, the other clasped firmly around Kala's, his thumb absently stroking her pulse point. The flash drive in his pocket held answers, or more questions, more dangers to navigate. Either way, they would face them together, bound by violence and that explosive kiss that had changed everything. The city lights blurred past as they drove, a constellation of artificial stars against the night sky. Kala watched her reflection in the bulletproof glass, noting how naturally she fit against Valerio's side, as if their bodies had been designed to complement each other. No going back now, no safe distance, just forward, into whatever storm awaited them, whatever price the ledger demanded be paid. The operations room hummed with servers and surveillance, feeds. Valerio inserted the flash drive while Kala perched on a leather chair nearby, her hands restlessly smoothing the fabric of her dress. Armed guards stood at every exit, their presence a reminder of the afternoon's violence. A distorted voice filled the room, mechanical and cold. "Once there was a king who stole a crown of paper and ink. He thought himself clever, using others as shields while he played with power. But every debt demands balance." The recording crackled. "To restore equilibrium, innocent collateral must be eliminated, unless the king returns what was never his." Kala's breath caught. The word collateral hung in the air like poison. Valerio's technicians traced embedded GPS coordinates, but each location led nowhere. Abandoned warehouses, empty lots, dead ends designed to waste time. His jaw tightened as he watched the futile results populate their screens. "The parable," Kala said softly. "It reminds me of something." She pressed her palm against her belly, protective. "I should have told you earlier about him." Valerio turned, his attention laser-focused. "Tell me now." "It was at the Carousel, that fancy club downtown. Everyone wore masks, some charity masquerade." Her fingers twisted in her lap. "He was different, gentle. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. When he touched me," she flushed. "It wasn't planned, but it felt right." Valerio's expression remained neutral, but his knuckles whitened against the desk. "When?" "4 months ago. He left a number, but when I tried to call weeks later, it was disconnected." She swallowed hard. "I never saw his face. The mask stayed on, even when—" Valerio's mind raced, calculating dates. 4 months ago, the night he'd infiltrated the Carousel's charity gala, masked and armed with skeleton keys to crack their security room. He remembered a woman in a silver dress, moonlight hair, sharp wit that cut through his defenses. One night of allowing himself to be simply a man, not a king. The timing aligned perfectly with her pregnancy. "The medic took blood samples earlier," he said carefully. "Standard procedure after trauma. I want to run additional tests." She nodded, understanding flickering across her face. "You think? We'll know soon." He pressed a button, summoning the doctor. Discretion is paramount. While the medic prepared the tests, Valerio dispatched teams to fortify the tower's perimeter. Additional snipers took positions on adjacent rooftops. Decoy vehicles left the garage at irregular intervals, designed to confuse anyone watching. Calla stood at the window, city lights reflecting in her eyes. I've spent months wondering about him. Now I might actually know. Valerio approached slowly, his presence solid behind her. Would that change things? Everything. Nothing. She turned to face him. I'm not the same person I was that night. Neither are you. The kiss they'd shared during the firefight lingered between them, unspoken, but undeniable. Violence and tenderness, threat and protection. Their world had no clean lines anymore. His security chief arrived with updates. All exits secured, surveillance expanded, protective details in place. Valerio absorbed the information while watching Calla from the corner of his eye. She'd moved to the coffee station, her movements precise as she measured grounds into the filter. The routine helps, she explained, catching his observation. When everything else is chaos, at least I can make decent coffee. It was such a practical response to their impossible situation that Valerio felt something in his chest shift. She didn't break under pressure. She adapted, found ways to steady herself. Hours ticked by. The medic worked efficiently, processing samples. Teams reported all clear at regular intervals. Calla eventually dozed in one of the leather chairs, exhaustion winning over anxiety. Near midnight, the city grid fluctuated, lights dimming and brightening in waves. Valerio carried Calla to his suite, laying her gently on the bed. She stirred briefly, murmuring something about timers and ovens before settling deeper into sleep. He stood in the doorway, watching her breathe. The strong line of her throat, the protective curl of her hands over her belly. Their child, he was almost certain. The timing, the targeting, the vault's recognition of her presence. Too many coincidences to ignore. The medic would confirm what he already suspected. Someone had discovered his weakness that night at the carousel and engineered this trap with devastating precision. They'd used her as a key, as bait, as leverage against him. But they'd miscalculated. Instead of a vulnerability, they'd given him something worth fighting for. Valerio checked his phone. No results yet. Outside, the city's lights continued their electric dance, buildings blinking like stars. He positioned himself to watch both Calla and the door, his weapon within easy reach. The night stretched ahead, full of possibilities and threats. But for now, she slept safely in his territory, under his protection. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The lab results arrived at 4:47 a.m., stark numbers on Valerio's encrypted tablet. He read them 3 times, each scan burning the certainty deeper. 99.99% probability of paternity. His child, his blood. The knowledge exploded through him like a controlled demolition, leaving possessive fury in its wake. He paced the operations room, pieces clicking into place. Someone had orchestrated this, used that masked night to create a living key to his vault, used Calla as bait, knowing his own child would draw him out. The elegance of the trap made his teeth ache. The medical suite's door whispered open. Calla emerged, wrapped in one of his dress shirts over loose pants, hair damp from a shower. She'd been restless since midnight, baking in the kitchen to stay occupied. The scent of vanilla and butter still clung to her skin. "You have that look," she said. "The results?" "Sit." He pulled out a chair, watched her settle before continuing. "The test is positive. I'm the father." Color drained from her face, then flooded back. "The masquerade. That was... you were..." She pressed both hands to her temples. "All this time you've been..." "I didn't know," he said quietly. "That night I allowed myself one moment of being someone else. No crown, no kingdom. Convenient." Her laugh held no humor. "Now you think you can just claim us? Own what you didn't even recognize?" "I'm claiming responsibility." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Someone used our connection to access things I've kept hidden. They tried to kill you, to kill our child, to force my hand. The vault." She touched her wrist where the hourglass mark stood stark against her skin. "I'm some kind of key?" "They engineered the security protocols to recognize your presence. A dead man's switch, using your life as leverage." She absorbed this, practical mind working through implications. "So what happens now?" "I build a world where you're both safe, where no one touches what's mine. I'm not a possession. No. He met her gaze steadily. You're my partner in this, the mother of my child. Everything I am, everything I control, exists to protect you now. His tablet chimed. The second encryption layer on Theo's flash drive had finally resolved, spitting out coordinates and security specs for a warehouse near the industrial port. The shell company ownership traced back through 7 layers of proxies to Benedict Hale's private holding group. We have a location, he said, already messaging his team. Hale's been running something through the docks. Calla stood, determination straightening her spine. When do we leave? You're not going anywhere. Like hell I'm not. She planted her hands on the desk. I'm already involved. Keeping me locked up won't change that. He studied her, the steel in her voice, the calculation in her eyes. She was right. Better to have her close, under his direct protection. Rules, he said finally. Non-negotiable. She nodded once, sharp and businesslike. List them. You wear protection. He retrieved a lightweight armored vest from a cabinet. Stay behind me at all times. Take this panic button. Press it once for immediate extraction, twice for full assault response. You follow every order instantly, no questions. Agreed. She shrugged into the vest, letting him adjust the straps. What are we looking for? Information. He helped her layer a windbreaker over the armor. Hale's been using the warehouse for high-security transfers. If Theo left a trail, it'll surface there. His team arrived in stages: advanced scouts, perimeter control, close protection. Each operator moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and comms. Valerio kept Calla close as he reviewed building schematics and security patrol patterns. Remember, he told her quietly, you're my eyes. Watch for anything unusual, especially anyone in gray coats or with hourglass tattoos. She nodded, fingers brushing her belly in that unconscious gesture of protection. The movement drew his attention, awakening that primal surge of possessiveness again. His child, his family, the targets painted on their backs would be answered in blood. They left as dawn turned the sky to brushed steel, the armored SUV cutting through early traffic. Calla stayed silent beside him, watching the city transform into industrial sprawl. Her hands were steady as she checked the panic fob's signal strength. The port materialized through morning fog, cranes like skeletal giants, stacked containers in rust-streaked towers. Salt air and diesel fumes filtered through the vehicle's ventilation. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries carried on the wind. Valerio's team confirmed positions, their voices controlled bursts in his earpiece. The warehouse loomed ahead, unremarkable except for the fresh paint on its security cameras. He killed the headlights, guiding the SUV into a shadow-pooled loading bay. Foghorns echoed across the water, lonely and distant. He signaled his men to spread out along the building's blind side where cameras couldn't track their approach. Beside him, Calla drew a deep breath, cementing herself in the moment. Remember, he murmured. Instant obedience. I remember. She met his eyes. Be careful. He touched her cheek briefly, allowing himself that small contact. Then he was moving, weapon ready, leading her into position as his team melted through the morning shadows toward their target. The warehouse air hung thick with motor oil and salt, the industrial stench clinging to everything like a second skin. Valerio led Calla through narrow aisles between towering cargo containers, his team spreading out in practiced formation, each man moving with the silent precision of predators. Their footsteps echoed off corrugated metal walls, each sound amplified in the pre-dawn quiet that felt fragile, ready to shatter at any moment. A muffled thump made Calla freeze, her heart stuttering against her ribs. Valerio raised his fist, a simple gesture that stopped his men in their tracks. The sound came again, a boot scraping concrete, the unmistakable noise of someone struggling. They found Theo zip-tied to a support strut, head lolling against his chest like a broken marionette. His usual nervous energy was gone, replaced by an exhausted pallor that made him look half dead. Dark circles ringed his eyes like bruises, and his clothes hung loose on his frame, stained with what looked like days of captivity. Check him, Valerio ordered the medic while keeping his weapon trained on the shadows, his eyes constantly scanning for threats lurking in the gloom. Jesus, V, Theo croaked as the ties were cut, wincing as blood rushed back into his numb hands. Took you long enough. Was starting to think I'd die in this shithole. Calla helped steady him as he slumped forward, his body trembling against hers. You're the one who set the vault to recognize me? Why me of all people? Had to. He rubbed his raw wrists, the skin beneath angry and blistered. Hale. He recruited me last year, wanted inside intel on your security. When I started dragging my feet, getting cold feet about the whole operation, he decided I was a liability, disposable, like everyone else who gets in his way. The Auditor, Valerio said flatly, the name falling like a death sentence in the cavernous space. Theo's laugh was bitter, ending in a painful cough. Hale is his front man, the respectable face of the operation, all smiles and charity galas. They're using your girl's biometrics as leverage. Get the ledger or watch the city burn. Simple as that. Impressive deduction. Benedict Hale's cultured voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Fluorescent lights buzzed to life one by one, harsh and blinding, revealing armed men on the catwalks above, at least a dozen mercenaries with automatic weapons trained on their position. Hale himself stepped from behind a container, immaculate in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Not a hair out of place, not a speck of dust on his polished shoes. Though you left out the best part. He lifted a tablet with manicured fingers, and drone footage appeared on the warehouse's giant display screen. The feed showed Valerio's penthouse suite, empty, stripped of anything valuable, just bare walls and vacant spaces where furniture had once stood. Hale's smile tightened, a flash of anger breaking through his perfect composure. Paranoid as ever, I see. No matter. He tapped the screen, and suddenly every digital billboard in the city skyline lit up with blazing red letters, "Return what you stole." The message pulsed like a heartbeat, visible through the high windows of the warehouse. A bit dramatic, Valerio said coolly, angling himself between Calla and the mercenaries, his body a human shield against whatever came next. Theo was already pulling equipment from his pockets, fingers flying over a compact keyboard, his earlier exhaustion forgotten in a burst of frantic energy. The drones are running on an autonomous network. Give me 2 minutes and I can disrupt their signal. You have one. Hale's voice hardened, all pretense of civility dropping away. The ledger crews. Now. Valerio reached slowly into his jacket and withdrew a leather-bound book, the movement deliberate, controlled. You mean this? Calla caught her breath, studying the object in his hands. Even at a glance, she could tell it wasn't the same book from the vault. The binding was newer, the pages too crisp, lacking the weathered patina of age and secrets that the real ledger carried. A decoy. Hale didn't even bother looking closer, his lips curling in disdain. Do you think me stupid? Do you think I can't tell the difference between the real crown and a hastily made copy? Thunder rolled. Overhead, the low rumble building to a crescendo that shook dust from the rafters. Rain began pattering against the metal roof, tentative at first, then growing steadily stronger until it drummed like bullets, a symphony of impending disaster. You have 1 hour, Hale continued pleasantly, as if discussing dinner plans rather than blackmail. Bring the real ledger to the exchange point, or your precious collateral drowns with the rest of the city. Every man, woman, and child in the lower districts. Theo's hands stilled on his keyboard, his face draining of what little color it had left. He's not bluffing, V. They've got control of the flood control systems. I saw the protocols they're using. Military-grade infiltration. Precisely. Hale spread his hands in a gesture of mock helplessness. The storm drains are already backing up. In 60 minutes, the underground infrastructure fails. The subway floods first, then the lower streets, thousands trapped. How many innocent lives are you willing to sacrifice for one book? How much blood can you stand on your hands? Valerio's expression didn't change, but Calla felt the tension radiating from him, a deadly current running beneath his skin. She touched his arm, feeling the coiled violence beneath his stillness, muscles rigid and ready to explode into action. The coordinates are being sent to your phone, Hale said, checking his watch with exaggerated care. 1 hour. Come alone. Or rather, bring your lovely key. We'll need her biometric confirmation that it's the genuine article. No substitutions, no tricks. More thunder shook the girders, metal groaning under the assault. Through the high windows, lightning illuminated sheets of rain turning the dawn sky to slate, the storm intensifying as if responding to Hale's threats. Tick-tock. Hale's smile was razor-thin, never reaching his cold eyes. The city's drowning will be on your hands, their final breaths your responsibility. The rain hammered harder, and Calla could hear water sloshing against the warehouse foundation, a sinister gurgling that confirmed Hale wasn't bluffing. Theo worked frantically at his keyboard, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill, while Valerio's men maintained their positions, weapons trained on the mercenaries above, awaiting the command that would turn the warehouse into a killing field. 1 hour, Hale repeated, backing toward the exit with the confidence of a man who knows he's won. The real ledger, or we'll see how well your kingdom treads water, how many loyal subjects you're willing to sacrifice for your crown. The storm's fury increased, rain and wind howling through gaps in the metal walls like the voices of the damned. Water was already seeping under the loading dock doors, spreading across the concrete in dark pools that reflected the harsh overhead lights. Calla felt the weight of the choice pressing down, the book that could destroy Valerio's empire versus countless innocent lives caught in the crossfire of a war they never asked to join. She met his eyes, seeing the same brutal calculation there, the math of sacrifice and salvation. Theo muttered curses as he fought the drone network, his fingers blurring across the keys in desperate determination. Above them, Hale's men kept their weapons steady, rain dripping from the catwalks like tears. The storm raged outside, transforming the city into a drowning maze of steel and glass, minutes ticking away toward disaster. Time to choose, crews, Hale called over the tempest, his voice barely audible above nature's fury. The crown you stole, or the flood that washes it all away, your precious book, or the lives of everyone beneath you. Thunder cracked, and the warehouse floor trembled. At first, Calla thought it was just another lightning strike, until water began spurting through hairline cracks in the concrete. Now, Hale said, and multiple explosions rocked the foundations. The sound of rushing water grew louder, and dark liquid began pooling around their feet. The storm drains weren't enough? Valerio's voice carried deadly calm. You had to rupture the mains? Insurance. Hale gestured to his men, who maintained their aim from the catwalks. Though you should be more concerned with who I represent. The auditor, Theo spat, fingers still flying over his keyboard. No. Hale's smile widened. The auditor is merely a title. I serve a consortium of the world's most powerful financiers, men who make kings like you seem small, and they want 2 things. The real ledger, and her. He pointed at Calla. The water was ankle-deep now, swirling with debris. The vault's biometric lock was engineered specifically for her signature. Quite elegant, really. The perfect key created months before you even met her properly. Calla's mind raced. The masked night, the pregnancy, the vault recognizing her. It hadn't been chance. She'd been crafted into a weapon against Valerio. You have nothing without the book, Valerio said. True. But once we have both, we'll release every secret in that ledger, every crime, every payoff, every bloody succession. Your empire drowns either way. More explosions rumbled underground. Water poured through widening cracks as the dock's infrastructure crumbled. On the catwalks, Hale's men adjusted their footing as the metal swayed. Calla watched Valerio's face, saw the tactical calculations behind his eyes. His men were outnumbered, but if they could just buy time... She stepped forward, water splashing around her calves. Let his men go. I'll negotiate. Calla? Valerio's warning was sharp. You want me as your key? Fine. But his people walk first. Hale considered her, head tilted. Brave. Foolish. But brave. Valerio moved with liquid grace, producing the decoy ledger again. This buys us 10 minutes to discuss terms. The water rose steadily as they faced each other across the flooding warehouse. Calla glanced at Valerio, seeking reassurance, but his eyes were fixed on the book in his hands. Something in her chest went cold. He was weighing the ledger against her, the book that held his power versus the woman carrying his child. And his expression told her everything. Her face hardened. She had been a pawn before. Never again. Behind Hale, Theo's work bore fruit. 2 of the surveillance drones suddenly dropped from view on the display screen, their feeds going dark. "The others are cycling to back up power," Hale snapped. "Fix it." The distraction was enough. Metal shrieked as Valerio and his men surged toward the catwalks. Gunfire erupted, bullets sparking off steel struts. The warehouse dissolved into chaos. Calla backed away as water sloshed around her knees. Her hand found the panic fob in her pocket, but she didn't press it. She wouldn't be a bargaining chip. Not for Hale, not for Valerio, not for anyone. Through the mayhem, she spotted a maintenance door with an emergency exit sign. Moving carefully in the rising water, she made her way along the wall. Another explosion rocked the building, and she stumbled but kept going. Rain poured through holes in the roof now, mixing with the flood. Lightning strobed through high windows, illuminating the firefight on the catwalks. She saw Valerio moving like a shadow through the chaos, deadly and focused. Her hand found the door handle. She took one last look at the battle above, at the man who had protected her and betrayed her in the same breath. "I make my own choices," she whispered, and pushed through into the storm. Sheets of rain instantly drenched her. Thunder boomed as she splashed through deepening water, using parked containers for cover. The entire dock was flooding, waves pushed by wind and ruptured pipes. Behind her, the warehouse door banged open. She heard Valerio's voice calling her name, but she pressed on into the downpour. Inside, Valerio stood in knee-deep water, his expression carved from stone as he watched her vanish into the storm. His men secured the remaining mercenaries while Theo worked frantically at his station, now mounted on a crate above the flood. "She's gone," Theo said unnecessarily. "V, what do you want me to do?" Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating Valerio's face. His eyes were flat and deadly, all pretense of mercy stripped away. "Burn them," he said softly. "Every shell company feeding the consortium, every account, every holding, every digital asset. Then prep for citywide counterstrike. They wanted to drown my kingdom?" His smile was terrible. "Let's see how well they swim instead." The storm raged on, water rising inexorably as thunder shook the heavens. But its fury was nothing compared to the cold violence in Valerio's eyes as he stared into the rain where Calla had disappeared. Lightning fractured the sky as Valerio's tactical teams deployed across the financial district. Through the storm-racked hours, he orchestrated a precise dismantling of the consortium's power base, each move calculated for maximum impact. "First target acquired," Theo reported from his emergency command center, sending Fragment A of the ledger data. Valerio watched the screens as the first revelation hit the dark web. Proof of human trafficking through shell companies linked to a consortium board member. No innocents exposed, just the monster behind the operation. "Fund managers are pulling out," an analyst called. "First feeder fund is crashing." Thunder rolled as Valerio checked another screen. No sign of Calla on the city's cameras, but he knew better than to trust electronics. People had patterns, habits born of comfort. She was a baker. She would seek familiar ground. "Fragment B releasing now," Theo announced. "Money laundering network exposed." The second consortium fund imploded as evidence of their crimes spread through secure channels. Valerio's phone buzzed with panicked messages from former allies jumping ship. Let them run. The ones who stayed clean would survive. The guilty would drown. "Sir," his driver said, "the bakery district's power is still on despite the outages." Valerio nodded. "Take us there." Rain hammered the armored SUV as they wound through flooded streets. The storm had knocked out power to half the city, but some blocks still glowed, including the one where a small artisanal bakery huddled between larger buildings. A faint light leaked from its windows. Through the glass, he saw movement in the kitchen. "Stay with the car," he ordered, stepping into the downpour. The back door was unlocked. Warmth and the scent of fresh bread enveloped him as he entered. Calla stood at a wooden work table, hands coated in flour, her borrowed clothes dusted white. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry as she shaped dough with steady movements. She didn't look up. I knew you'd find me. The ovens gave you away. He moved closer, noting how she'd arranged her workspace with precise efficiency. You could have gone anywhere. I needed to think. Her hands didn't stop moving. And I think better when I'm baking. Fragment C is live, Theo's voice murmured through his earpiece. Third fund beginning collapse. Valerio switched off the comm. This moment needed no interruption. I won't apologize for protecting what's mine, he said. That's the problem. She sliced the dough with sharp strokes. I'm not yours. This baby isn't yours. We're people, not possessions. You misread me at the warehouse. I was buying time. Were you? She finally met his gaze. Because I saw a man choosing between his power and his heart, and power won. Lightning flickered, casting harsh shadows. Valerio stepped closer into the flower-dusted light of her space. Marry me, he said quietly. Her hands stilled. What? At dawn. My name on the birth certificate. My ring on your finger. My life rebuilt around your heartbeat. Pretty words, she resumed, shaping dough. But a cage made of gold is still a cage. Then let me prove it. He pulled out his phone, showed her the live feed of his vault. I'll destroy it. The ledger, the vault, all of it. In front of you. She studied him, reading past his controlled expression to the truth beneath. You'd give up that much power? Power means nothing if it costs me you. The ovens hummed in the background as she considered. Outside, the storm's fury began to ease, rain softening from violent sheets to a steady patter. I need 15 minutes, she said finally, to finish here. He nodded, watching as she moved through her familiar routine with graceful efficiency. She shaped the last loaves, wiped down surfaces, and checked temperatures. Her movements were precise, almost meditative. When the final counter gleamed and the ovens were safely off, she washed her hands thoroughly, removing every trace of flour. She dried them on a clean towel, then turned to face him. I won't be controlled, she said. Not by you, not by anyone. I'm not offering control. I'm offering partnership. She studied him for a long moment, then held out her hand. He took it, feeling the lingering warmth from her work, the strength in her fingers. Together they walked to the back door. She locked it carefully, checking the handle twice, a baker's habits protecting her space. The rain had gentled further, more mist than downpour now. They got into the waiting SUV, its interior dry and warm. As they pulled away from the curb, Valerio saw her glance back at the bakery one last time. It won't be the last time you bake there, he said softly. No, she agreed, but it will be different now. They drove through empty streets gleaming with rain. The storm clouds were breaking up, revealing hints of pale light along the eastern horizon. Dawn was coming, ready or not. Cala's hand remained in his as they headed toward his tower. She hadn't fully relaxed, but she was present, committed to this moment and whatever came next. It was more than enough. The city was changing around them, power grids flickering back to life as emergency crews worked. The consortium's carefully built empire was crumbling, their secrets exposed to carefully chosen eyes. But none of that mattered as much as the woman beside him, her fingers intertwined with his, her quiet breathing matching the rhythm of the windshield wipers. Above them, the clouds continued to thin. Threads of sunrise threatened the darkness, promising a new day. Whatever came with it, they would face it together, not as king and possession, but as equals who chose each other. They rode in comfortable silence through the wet streets, both aware that everything had shifted. The game board had been overturned, the pieces scattered. Now they would build something new from the ruins, something stronger because it was freely chosen. The SUV turned onto the avenue leading to his tower, its windows reflecting the first pale hints of dawn. The storm was ending, but their story was just beginning. The vault's steel door whispered shut behind them. Inside, temperature-controlled air raised goosebumps on Cala's arms. Valerio's presence was steady at her back as they approached the wall that had recognized her before. Your choice, he said quietly. We end this together, or we walk away. Cala touched her belly, felt the flutter of movement within. No more running. He withdrew the crown ledger from its hiding place and placed it in her hands. The leather was butter soft, well worn. Such a small thing to hold so much power and pain. "Ready?" he asked. She pressed her wrist to the scanner. The hourglass tattoo glowed faintly as hidden mechanics whirred. The wall panel slid back with a pneumatic hiss. Valerio struck a flare, its chemical brightness harsh in the confined space. Red light caught the planes of his face as he held it out to her. "You light it," he said. "Your freedom, your choice." She touched the flare to the ledger's corner. The paper caught quickly, hungry flames spreading across pages filled with secrets and lies. The heat forced them back a step. Through his earpiece, Theo's voice crackled. Sensors registered thermal spike, initiating server purge sequence. Somewhere in the building's bones, hard drives began to spin up, executing their final command. The kill switch would ripple outward, erasing every mirror of the ledger's contents. Heavy boots in the corridor outside made them both turn, multiple sets, moving fast. "Hail!" Valerio said, voice flat. "Right on schedule!" The door burst open. Hale led his kill team in, faces set behind tactical gear. Their rifles swept the room, finding Valerio and Calla beside the burning remains of the ledger. "Stop!" Hale's voice cracked with desperation. "The real book has to be here somewhere. That can't be—" The lights cut out. In the sudden darkness, only the dying flare and smoldering book provided illumination. Red emergency strips along the floor flickered uncertainly. "Now," Valerio said quietly into his comm. Gunfire erupted from multiple positions as his hidden team engaged. Hale's men returned fire blindly, muzzle flashes strobing the space. Calla's hand found the fire alarm lever. She yanked it down. Sprinklers burst to life overhead. Water cascaded down, shorting out weapon electronics. Cursing filled the corridor as rifles failed. The fight devolved into brutal close combat. Valerio moved like a shadow through the chaos, precise and lethal. His people knew the layout, used the darkness to their advantage. Hale tried to retreat but found his path blocked. He fired wildly with a backup pistol until the slide locked empty. Valerio's hand closed around his throat. "The consortium is finished," he said softly. "Your accounts are frozen, your secrets exposed, your power gone." "You can't," Hale choked out. "I already have." A single gunshot echoed in the confined space. Hale slumped. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The sprinklers began to cycle down as smoke detectors registered clear air. "Server purge complete," Theo reported. "All mirrors wiped. It's done." Water dripped steadily in the silence that followed. Emergency lights sputtered back to full power, revealing the aftermath. Medics moved among the wounded, separating friend from foe. Calla stood beside the wall panel, soaked to the skin. Soot streaked her face where ash and water mixed, but her eyes were clear, unflinching. Valerio crossed to her, took her face gently between his hands. His thumb brushed away a smudge of ash from her cheek. "Are you ready?" he asked. "To live life our way?" She studied him for a long moment. This man who could kill without hesitation but touch her with such care. Who had built an empire of secrets but burned it all down for her. Dawnlight began to filter through high windows, clean and bright after the storm. She nodded once. In that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of the old world and the promise of the new, they had finally found their truth. Not in power or possession, but in the choice to build something together. The vault that had held so many secrets now stood empty, its purpose served. Water pooled on the floor, reflecting the strengthening daylight. Outside, sirens drew closer, but inside this space, time seemed suspended. Medics continued their work efficiently. Theo coordinated with security to secure the perimeter and manage the incoming police response. But Valerio remained focused solely on Calla, his hands still framing her face as though she were the only real thing in a world of shadows. She reached up to cover his hands with her own, grounding them both in this moment of transformation. Her skin was cool from the sprinklers, but her touch burned with life and possibility. The last of the smoke dissipated into nothing. What remained was simpler, cleaner, a truth stripped of artifice and manipulation. They had burned away the old rules to write new ones together. Dawn painted the wet floors gold, turning puddles into mirrors that caught and held the light. In that pure morning radiance, they stood together, neither victor nor prize, but partners who had chosen each other despite everything that had tried to tear them apart. Their breaths synchronized unconsciously, falling into the same quiet rhythm. Around them, the world continued its chaotic dance of aftermath and consequences, but in this moment, they were still, complete, ready to begin. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window, casting a gentle glow over Calla as she cradled their newborn daughter. Valerio stood beside the bed, his usual steel-edged control softened by wonder as he traced a finger over the baby's dark curls. "She's perfect," he murmured, voice rough with emotion. The birth certificate lay on the side table, waiting. Valerio picked up the pen and signed his full name with careful deliberation, making official what his heart had known for months. "Father, I swear," he said, meeting Calla's tired but radiant gaze. "My violence will never touch either of you. Only my devotion, only my protection." She smiled, understanding the weight of that vow from a man whose world was built on carefully measured force. "I know." 3 days later, they gathered in a walled garden filled with climbing roses and filtered morning light. The ceremony was small, just them, Theo, and the official. No fanfare, no elaborate declarations. They exchanged simple gold bands that caught the sun. Theo stood as godfather, his nervous energy temporarily stilled by the gravity of the moment. He'd found his own redemption in helping destroy the consortium, and now he watched his former boss become something more. A husband, a father, a man who chose love over power. Later that week, they visited a discreet clinic where a skilled technician lasered away the hourglass brand from Calla's wrist. In its place, she chose a delicate crown above their daughter's initials, transforming a mark of threat into one of belonging. "Your choice," Valerio had insisted when she mentioned wanting the new tattoo. "Always your choice." He presented her with keys to a rebuilt bakery, the windows now subtly reinforced with bullet-resistant glass. The back office held a comfortable chair and cradle beside a desk equipped with security feeds. The schedule posted on the wall included real Sundays, family days. "It's beautiful," she whispered, running her hands over the gleaming counters. The space felt both familiar and new, like their relationship, built on the bones of the past but transformed into something stronger. The ovens waited, ready for her return when she chose. Her staff had been carefully vetted, the security subtle but thorough. She could create here safely, build something that was purely hers, while knowing her family was protected. That evening, as twilight softened the city's edges, Valerio led them to the penthouse roof, the same roof where he'd found her that rain-slick night, desperate and afraid. Now the space held no shadows, no lurking threats, only the wind and emerging stars. Their daughter slept peacefully against Calla's chest as Valerio wrapped his coat around them both. The fabric still carried his warmth, his scent, but now it sheltered rather than confined. "Never to the world," he promised, arms encircling his family. "Only to you." Calla leaned back against him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Below them, the city breathed easier, as if it too had shed old burdens. The past was sealed away, the ledger destroyed, the consortium scattered, the threats neutralized. Their future stretched before them, open with possibility. Tomorrow would bring its own rhythm, unlocking the bakery together at 6, warming ovens as the sun rose. But tonight was for this moment, this peace. The baby stirred slightly, tiny fingers curling around the edge of the coat. Valerio's hand covered hers, encompassing both his daughter's grasp and Calla's waist. The simple gold band on his finger caught the last rays of sunset. Stars began to populate the darkening sky, far more visible now that the storm clouds of recent months had cleared. A cool breeze carried the scent of the garden roses up from below, mingling with the familiar city air. They stood together, watching lights blink on across the skyline. Each window represented a story, a life unfolding. Their own story had transformed from one of pursuit and possession into something richer: partnership, trust, and a love freely given. The baby's soft breathing set a gentle rhythm. Calla hummed quietly, an old lullaby that seemed to float on the evening air. Valerio's arms tightened fractionally around them both, protective without constraining. This roof had once been a place of endings, staged deaths, and desperate gambits. Now it was transformed into a beginning, a quiet sanctuary where they could watch their city and hold their peace close. The last colors of sunset faded from the sky, leaving only the stars and the urban constellation of windows. Tomorrow would bring its own demands. Early mornings at the bakery, security reports, the constant balance of normal life with necessary vigilance. But those concerns belonged to tomorrow. Tonight was for standing together, wrapped in shared warmth, watching their world settle into its new pattern. The past was sealed away, its lessons learned, but its power broken. Their daughter slept on, secure in the knowledge that she was loved, protected, cherished. Around them, the city hummed with its endless energy, but here on the roof, they had found their stillness.